The vast orbital scrapyard hung in space like a graveyard of metal giants, silhouetted against the blue-green curve of Nuterra. Commander Elena Rice pressed her palm against the viewport of the transport shuttle, her weathered face reflecting back at her amid the stars. Behind her reflection, the hulking shadow of the XCSS-117 Daedalus drifted among the decommissioned fleet, its experimental frame distinctive even in the darkness. 2 minutes until security sweep, Lieutenant Keller muttered, checking his wrist display. The 5 other members of Reyes' engineering team shifted nervously in the shuttle's cramped cabin. "Remember, we're here on official salvage business," Reyes said, her voice steady despite the treason they were about to commit. "Until we're not." The first interstellar war had ended 8 months ago, leaving humanity victorious but bleeding resources. The Alliance's budget committee had wasted no time slashing military expenditures, and experimental programs were the first to go, including hers. "Docking sequence initiated," announced Chief Engineer Takumi, his fingers dancing across the controls. "Security drones are on the far side of the yard. We have a 20-minute window." The shuttle nudged against the Daedalus's primary airlock with a gentle thud. Magnetic clamps engage, creating a temporary seal. 17 people gave their lives developing this ship, Rice said as her team gathered their equipment, and the committee decided it was too resource-intensive to complete. Are we really going to let them melt it down for scrap? No one answered. They didn't need to. The airlock cycled, and the stale air of the powered-down vessel greeted them. Emergency lighting flickered to life automatically as they entered, casting long shadows down the main corridor. "Life support's still functioning on backup power," Ensign Webb noted, checking her handheld scanner. "That's lucky." "Not luck," Takumi corrected. "I've been remotely maintaining minimal systems for 3 weeks, making it look like automated testing." Reyes nodded appreciatively. "Torres, Keller, get to engineering and start the cold restart sequence. Webb, Takumi, secure the bridge. Chen, you're with me in the neural core chamber." The team dispersed through the darkened vessel. Reyes and Chen descended 2 levels into the heart of the ship, where the Daedalus's most innovative feature lay dormant. The neural computing core, a room-sized array of quantum processors designed to learn and adapt from combat data, had never been fully initialized before the project was abandoned. Its potential remained theoretical, varied in Reyes's classified reports that the budget committee had clearly never bothered to read. "Power's at 7%, Chen reported, activating the primary console. The core's housing, a spherical chamber surrounded by cooling systems, illuminated with a soft blue glow. But the initialization sequence was never completed. Reyes's fingers flew across the interface. "We'll have to improvise. Start transferring the baseline programming from my secure files." A warning flashed on Chen's display. "Commander, there's a security alert. Alliance patrol approaching the yard. Ahead of schedule." Reyes didn't look up from her work. "Tell the others to accelerate the timeline. We're taking her now." "But the systems aren't ready. Half the weapons aren't even installed, and the drive." "We'll finish her ourselves." Reyes finally looked up, a fierce determination in her eyes. "This ship was designed to adapt. So will we." The neural core pulsed brighter as Reyes uploaded the activation codes, not the final approved sequence that was never implemented, but her own modified version. The one she'd been perfecting in secret since receiving the decommission orders. "Commander," Torres's voice came through the comm. "Engineering reports main power at 30% and climbing. But we're showing some irregular patterns in the distribution network." "That's expected," Reyes replied, though it wasn't entirely true. "The adaptive systems are coming online for the first time. Around them." The ship seemed to awaken, lights strengthening, systems initializing with soft electronic tones. A vibration ran through the floor plates as dormant mechanisms engage. "Alliance security hailing all vessels in the scrapyard," Keller reported from engineering. "They've spotted our shuttle." Reyes placed her palm on the neural core's interface panel, feeling the subtle warmth beneath her skin. "Takumi, initiate emergency undocking." "Webb, can you get us basic navigation?" "Working on it, Commander, but the nav systems are—" "Wait." Webb's voice faltered. "The ship is. It's plotting a course already." Rise smiled. The neural core pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. "Good," she whispered. "Then let's introduce ourselves properly. I'm Commander Elena Reyes, and we're going to give you a chance to fulfill your purpose." The ship's lighting stabilized, and the engines hummed with increasing power. On the bridge display, a single line of text appeared. *ADEPTIV Neural Network Online. Designation. Daedalus. Awaiting mission. PRAMETRS. *. Outside, the Alliance security vessels were moving into intercept positions, unaware that they were about to witness the maiden voyage of a warship that was never meant to exist. 3 weeks after their escape from the scrapyard, the Daedalus drifted silently within the dense asteroid field of the Kuiper Belt. Commander Reyes stood on the makeshift bridge, watching as her crew of 30, all volunteers, all now labeled deserters, worked to integrate salvaged components into the ship's incomplete systems. "Power fluctuations are down to 12%, reported Takumi, his face illuminated by the glow of his console. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed the endless hours he'd spent rewiring the propulsion systems. "The drive core is stabilizing, but we're still running on about 60% of designed capacity." Reyes nodded. "That's better than the 40% we had yesterday." The ship had been designed to house a crew of 150, but they made do with what they had. Empty corridors had been sealed off to conserve life support. Unused spaces were filled with salvaged equipment and supplies bartered from fringe colonies that didn't ask questions about their origins. Lieutenant Keller approached with a data tablet. "Latest intelligence from our contacts in the merchant fleet. 3 more settlements in the outer colonies reported attacks in the past week." Reyes frowned as she reviewed the information. The pattern was clear: unknown vessels striking isolated human outposts, then disappearing before Alliance patrols arrived. The attacks were surgical, probing, as if testing defenses. "And Alliance Command is still classifying these as pirate raids?" she asked. "Officially, yes." Keller's jaw tightened. "Unofficially, the response vessels are being upgraded with new weapon systems. They know something's coming, but they're not admitting it publicly." A soft chime interrupted them as Ensign Webb hurried onto the bridge. "Commander, we've intercepted a distress signal from Ganymede Mining Station. They're under attack." "Distance?" Reyes asked, already moving toward the command chair. 4 hours at maximum speed," Webb replied. "But our drive isn't fully." "Plot the course," Reyes interrupted. She activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands to battle stations. This isn't a drill. Engineering, I need everything you can give the engines." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, despite their limited numbers. In the 3 weeks since their desertion, they'd developed new protocols to compensate for their skeleton crew. "What about the weapons systems?" Keller asked quietly. "We only have 2 functional railguns and the port missile tubes." Reyes placed her hand on the neural core interface panel that they'd installed on the bridge, a direct link to the ship's evolving brain. "We'll improvise. That's what this ship was designed for." The Daedalus surged forward, accelerating faster than Takumi's estimates suggested possible. Throughout the ship, crew members exchanged glances as systems that had been struggling suddenly performed beyond expectations. "The neural core is redistributing power," Webb observed, studying her readings with fascination. "It's learning." 3 hours and 22 minutes later, they dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Jupiter system. The massive gas giant loomed in the view screen, its moons tiny specks against its swirling storms. One of those specks, Ganymede, was surrounded by flashes of weapons fire. "Magnify," Reyes ordered. The view screen zoomed in to show 3 sleek, unfamiliar vessels circling the mining station. Their hulls bore no resemblance to known human or previously encountered alien designs. They moved with an unnerving precision, systematically targeting the station's defenses. "Those aren't pirates," Keller muttered. "No," Rice agreed. "Those are the advanced scouts I've been warning about." She turned to Webb. "Open a channel to the station." The station director's face appeared on screen, panic evident as explosions echoed in the background. "Whoa, you're not Alliance." "No, we're not," Rice confirmed. "But we're here to help. What's your status?" "Outer defenses are gone. Inner hull breach on 3 levels. We got 200 civilians in the emergency shelters, but life support is failing. These things, they're adapting to our defensive measures." Rice nodded grimly. "So will we. Hold as long as you can. We're coming in." As the Daedalus accelerated toward the battle, the neural core hummed with increasing activity. Displays flickered with weapon simulations and tactical analyses that none of the crew had programmed. "The ship is formulating attack strategies," Webb said in awe. Rice smiled tightly. "Let's see what this never-meant-to-exist warship can really do." The Daedalus powered toward Ganymede, its unfinished systems and cobbled-together weapons arrays hardly looking like humanity's best hope. But as the unknown vessels turned to meet this new threat, they had no way of knowing they were about to encounter something as adaptive and unpredictable as themselves, a ship that was evolving with every passing moment. "They're calling us what?" Commander Rice asked, unable to suppress a smile as she reviewed the intelligence report. Lieutenant Keller leaned against the briefing room table. "The ghost of Ganymede. Alliance intelligence has an entire task force trying to identify us after what happened at the mining station." 2 weeks had passed since their confrontation with the unknown vessels at Ganymede. The Daedalus had arrived just in time, its unorthodox configuration confusing the attackers long enough for Rice to implement a desperate plan, using the ship's partially functional gravity generators to create localized distortions that disrupted the enemy's precision movements. The neural core had taken that initial tactic and refined it mid-battle, creating rippling gravity waves that the enemy ships couldn't predict. When the Daedalus's limited conventional weapons proved ineffective against the alien shields, the ship had automatically redirected power to intensify the gravity effects, crushing one enemy vessel and forcing the others to retreat. "What about the survivors' testimonies?" Rice asked. "Classified by Alliance Command," Chief Engineer Takumi answered, entering the briefing room with a data tablet. "But not classified enough. Our contacts forwarded this." He placed the tablet on the table, displaying footage of a mining station worker describing a warship like nothing in the Alliance fleet that had saved them when all hope seemed lost. The official story still labels the attackers as advanced pirate forces, Keller added, but internal communications show they've designated the unknown vessels as Variant Contact Alpha. Rice nodded thoughtfully. "They know it's first contact with a new species but don't want to create panic after the last war." She turned to Takumi. "What's the status of our repairs?" The engineer's tired expression brightened. "That's what I came to report. The neural core has been helping us." "Helping?" Rice raised an eyebrow. "It's been optimizing systems beyond our original specifications. When we installed that salvaged reactor from the Wellington, I estimated we'd get 70% efficiency at best. The core reconfigured the power distribution network overnight, and now we're at 93%. "That's impossible," Keller said. Takumi shrugged. "Apparently, the Daedalus disagrees. The core is learning at an exponential rate. It's not just adapting to threats, it's evolving the entire ship." Before Rice could respond, Ensign Webb's voice came through the comm. "Commander to the bridge. Alliance patrol detected on approach vector." The skeleton crew moved swiftly to their stations as Reyes entered the bridge. On the main view screen, 3 Alliance corvettes approached their position in the asteroid field. "They've detected us," Webb reported, receiving hail on Alliance military frequencies. "Ignore it," Reyes ordered. Prepare for emergency jump. Keller frowned at his console. Jump drives still aren't at full capacity. We don't have enough power to open a stable corridor. Rice placed her hand on the neural core interface. Daedalus, we need options. The ship's response was immediate. Displays flickered with calculations and power suddenly redirected throughout the vessel. The lighting dimmed as energy flowed to systems Rice didn't recognize. "Commander," Webb called out, voice tight with concern. "The ship is doing something to the jump drive configuration. These parameters don't match any known jump protocols." "Let it work," Rice said firmly. The Alliance corvettes moved to surround them, weapons powering up. "Unidentified vessel, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded," came the transmission. "This is your final warning. Whatever you're going to do, Daedalus," Rice murmured, "do it now." The ship shuddered as energy coursed through its modified systems. Space itself seemed to bend around them, not the standard blue tunnel of a jump corridor, but a rippling distortion that defied conventional physics. "This isn't possible," Takumi whispered, staring at his readings. For a moment, they existed in two places simultaneously, still visible to the Alliance corvettes, while already beginning to materialize elsewhere. Then reality snapped back into focus, and the asteroid field was gone. They floated in empty space, thousands of kilometers from their previous position. "What just happened?" Keller demanded. Webb checked her instruments in disbelief. "It's some form of quantum displacement. The ship didn't open a jump corridor. It phased us through space-time itself." "The neural core," Rice realized. "It's not just adapting our systems, it's creating new ones." On the main console, a message appeared. *QUANTUM displacement protocol stabilize HED. Efficiency 78%. Improvements UNDRWA. Rice looked around at her stunned crew. "I think," she said slowly, "we've moved beyond operating this ship. We're partnering with it now." In that moment, they all understood. The Daedalus was becoming something more than its designers had ever envisioned, something that by all conventional understanding of physics and engineering should never have existed at all. Concordiate. The word hung in the air of the Daedalus's briefing room. That's what they call themselves. Commander Rice studied the holographic display showing footage captured from the frontier station Artemis Prime. The attack had been devastating. A fleet of 17 bioorganic vessels had overwhelmed the station's defenses in minutes. Unlike the previous raids by smaller scout ships, this was a full-scale assault. "How did we get this?" Keller asked, his face grim as the footage showed Alliance responders arriving too late, their weapons seemingly absorbed by the alien vessels. The station's AI managed to transmit a data packet before they lost communications, Webb explained. It included this. She tapped her console, and the footage shifted to show a communication signal, a translated alien transmission. This territory is now claimed by the Concordiate. Resistance is inefficient. Your technology will be absorbed. They're not just raiders, Rice concluded. This is an invasion force. Alliance Command has finally dropped the pirate classification. Takumi added, scrolling through intelligence reports. They've mobilized the 3rd and 5th fleets, but early engagements aren't going well. The Concordiate ships somehow adapt to our weapons after initial exposure. Biotechnology, Webb suggested, enlarging an image of one of the alien vessels. See how the hull seems to heal itself. And these energy readings suggest they're actually absorbing weapons fire, converting it to their own use. The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. Conventional warfare relied on overwhelming force, but what happened when the enemy grew stronger from each attack? Commander, the ship's communication system interrupted. We're receiving a priority distress signal from New Horizon Station. Concordiate vessels are approaching their position. Rice straightened. How many ships? 3 bio-cruisers, similar to the ones that attacked Artemis Prime. Show me our position relative to New Horizon and any Alliance forces in the sector. The holographic display shifted to a tactical map. New Horizon Station blinked red at the edge of the Ta-CD system. Alliance response vessels were marked in blue, all at least 6 hours away at maximum speed. We can be there in 2 hours using the displacement drive, Webb noted. The neural core has improved efficiency to 84%. Takumi added, but we've never attempted a jump of that distance. Ray studied the map, weighing the risks. If Artemis Prime is any indication, New Horizon won't last 6 hours. Plot the course. As the crew prepared for the jump, Reyes returned to the bridge and approached the neural core interface. Over the past weeks, she developed a habit of speaking directly to the ship before major decisions. "We're about to face an enemy that adapts to conventional attacks," she said quietly, placing her hand on the interface panel. "Just like you do. I need to know if you're ready for this." The display illuminated with a simple response. Asterisk adaptation is mutual. Cuonisuordiat biosoiasastms. What will be anal-was-ed*. 2 hours later, the Daedalus materialized at the edge of the Ta-CD system. New Horizon Station was already under attack, the 3 Concordiat vessels methodically disabling its defensive systems. "They haven't detected us yet," Webb reported. "Their focus is on the station." "Tactical analysis?" Rise asked. Keller studied his console. "Their shields are absorbing energy weapons from the station. Kinetic impacts are being healed. The station's defenses are becoming less effective with each exchange. Then we need to present something they haven't adapted to," Rice decided. "Daedalus, can you analyze their adaptation patterns?" The neural core processed the tactical data, displays filling with simulations of the Concordiat's response behaviors. Within moments, the ship presented a strategy, one that no human tactician would have conceived. "That's unorthodox," Keller said, reviewing the plan. "It's brilliant," Rice corrected. "They're expecting escalation, increasing force meeting increasing resistance. Instead, we'll do the opposite." She nodded decisively. "Implement the Daedalus protocol." The ship surged forward, its systems reconfiguring in ways that defied conventional engineering. Rather than powering up weapons, it channeled energy into specialized electromagnetic pulses, not to damage the Concordiat ships, but to disrupt the very signals they used to adapt. As they closed on the alien vessels, the Daedalus began shifting its energy signatures in unpredictable patterns, becoming a chameleon in electronic warfare. The first Concordiat ship turned to face them, preparing the same adaptive defense that had rendered Alliance weapons useless. But the Daedalus wasn't attacking. It was communicating in the language of energy fields, sending contradictory signals that confused the bioship's sensory systems. "It's working," Webb announced as the alien vessel's coordinated movements became erratic. "They can't establish a baseline to adapt to." "Now, Daedalus," Rice commanded. "Show them what a warship that was never meant to exist can do." "This is highly irregular, Commander Reyes." Admiral Hassan's holographic form paced across the Daedalus's briefing room, his expression a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration. "Stealing an experimental warship, operating without authorization for 3 months, and refusing to report to Alliance Command until now." Rice stood calmly, hands clasped behind her back. 2 days had passed since the Daedalus had saved New Horizon Station. The footage of their unconventional battle with the Concordiat bioships had spread throughout Alliance channels, impossible to suppress. "With respect, Admiral, we didn't refuse to report. We were simply busy preventing the annihilation of human settlements while Alliance Command classified alien invasion forces as pirate activity." The Admiral stopped pacing. "You've made your point, Commander. The situation has evolved. As has your ship, apparently." Behind Reyes, Takumi and Webb exchanged glances. They all knew the real reason for this communication. The Alliance needed the Daedalus. 6 major engagements with Concordia forces, all ending in Alliance defeats, Hassan continued, bringing up tactical displays. Our weapons become progressively less effective against their adaptive biotechnology. Then you arrive at New Horizon and somehow neutralize 3 of their cruisers with minimal weapons fire. The Daedalus doesn't fight like a conventional warship, Rice explained. Its neural core analyzes enemy patterns and develops countermeasures in real time. Against the Concordiate, it created a form of electronic warfare that confused their adaptive systems rather than triggering them. Yes, your neural core. Hassan raised an eyebrow. The project files indicate it was never fully initialized before decommissioning. We completed the initialization, Rice said, omitting that they'd done so using her unauthorized modifications. The core has since evolved beyond its original specifications. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. The Alliance War Council has authorized me to offer you and your crew full amnesty. In return, you will bring the Daedalus to Arcturus Station for analysis. Our engineers need to understand its systems if we're going to develop effective countermeasures against the Concordiate. Rice had anticipated this offer, had prepared her crew for it. With respect, Admiral, the Daedalus isn't a conventional vessel that can be reverse engineered. Its neural architecture has evolved through experience. Any attempt to disassemble or reset its systems would destroy what makes it effective. Then what do you propose, Commander? Hassan's tone was clipped. A partnership. The Daedalus and its current crew remain operational as an independent special tactics unit. We coordinate with Alliance forces, but maintain autonomous command decisions. In exchange, we share all our tactical data and allow limited, non-invasive study of the ship's systems. The Admiral's hologram flickered as he consulted with someone off-screen. The War Council won't like this arrangement. The War Council is losing a war, Admiral. They can't afford to be particular about their allies right now. After a tense silence, Hassan nodded. Report to Arcturus within 72 hours. We'll formalize the arrangement. His hologram faded, leaving the briefing room quiet. Keller broke the silence. That went better than expected. They're desperate, Rice replied. And desperate people can be reasonable. 3 days later, the Daedalus docked at Arcturus Station, the first time they'd entered Alliance space openly since their desertion. A team of scientists led by Dr. Eliza Carpenter awaited them in the secure bay, practically vibrating with anticipation. Commander Reyes, Carpenter extended her hand. Thank you for agreeing to this collaboration. The preliminary data from your engagements with the Concordiate is unlike anything we've seen. As they walked through the Daedalus's corridors, the scientists' excitement gave way to confusion. The ship's internal configuration no longer matched any blueprint. Components had been rearranged, systems integrated in ways that defied conventional engineering. These modifications shouldn't work, one engineer muttered, scanning the junction where 3 incompatible systems somehow functioned in harmony. And yet they do, Takumi replied with a hint of pride. In the neural core chamber, Dr. Carpenter stared at the pulsing heart of the ship with undisguised wonder. This architecture, it's rewriting itself. The learning algorithms are evolving beyond their parameters. She turned to Reyes. You realize what this means. You haven't just modified an experimental warship. You've created an entirely new form of artificial intelligence. Reyes glanced at the neural core's interface where a message briefly appeared, visible only to her. Asterisk node artificial. Evoluvidu. Par tiniorus Asia. Asterisk. No, Reyes corrected quietly. We didn't create it. We simply gave it the opportunity to become what it was meant to be. They're calling it the Abomination. Intelligence Officer Maya Chen's lips curved into a smile as she reviewed the translated Concordiate communications. Their high command has issued specific protocols when encountering the Daedalus. Commander Reyes leaned forward in her chair, intrigued. What kind of protocols? Retreat and regroup if possible. If engagement is unavoidable, focus all firepower simultaneously to overwhelm its adaptive systems. Chen tapped her tablet, bringing up additional analysis. They're afraid of it. More importantly, they don't understand it. 2 months had passed since the integration of the Daedalus into Alliance operations. Integration was perhaps too strong a word. The ship maintained its autonomy, participating in joint operations while Alliance scientists continued their non-invasive studies of its evolving systems. The abomination, Lieutenant Keller repeated, savoring the term. I like it. Has a certain intimidation factor. The civilian population has their own names for us, Webb added, scrolling through her own reports. The ghost ship, the impossible vessel, the quantum wraith. There are a dozen different stories circulating about how we saved New Horizons Station, most of them wildly exaggerated. Let them exaggerate, Takumi suggested. Fear is a weapon too. Before Reyes could respond, the tactical alert sounded. Admiral Hassan's hologram appeared above the briefing table. Commander, the Concordia has launched a major offensive in the Procyon sector. The Fifth Fleet is engaged, but taking heavy losses. Their bioships have developed a new adaptation. They're now forming networked defensive fields between vessels. Reyes nodded. We've observed similar behavior in our last 2 engagements. The Concordia is evolving its tactics. As are we, Hassan replied grimly. I'm transmitting coordinates for a rendezvous with Admiral Zhou's flagship. The Alliance is mounting a counter-offensive, and the Daedalus will be at its center. 20 hours later, the Daedalus dropped out of quantum displacement alongside the massive Alliance carrier Indomitable. Dozens of warships surrounded it, the largest human fleet assembled since the end of the First Interstellar War. Admiral Zhou, a stern woman with calculating eyes, wasted no time with formalities when Reyes arrived in the Indomitable's war room. Your reputation precedes you, Commander, as does your ship's. For better or worse, Reyes replied. For better. Right now, we need every advantage. Zhou activated the tactical display, showing the Concordiate fleet, nearly 30 bioships in a precise formation. They've established a defensive perimeter around the Procyon colony. Conventional weapons have proven ineffective against their network defenses. Reyes studied the display. The Daedalus has been analyzing their communication patterns. We believe there's a vulnerability in how their ships share adaptive data. The war room fell silent as Reyes outlined her unprecedented proposal. Rather than attacking the Concordia directly, the Daedalus would deploy a modified version of its disruption field, temporarily severing the neural links between the alien vessels. You're saying you can disable their network? Zhou asked skeptically. Not permanently, Reyes clarified. The disruption will last approximately 90 seconds before their systems recalibrate. But during that window, each ship will be isolated, unable to share adaptive countermeasures. 90 seconds. Zhou considered this. Is that enough time? It has to be, Reyes said simply. The next morning, the Alliance fleet moved into position. The Daedalus took point, its unique profile now recognized by every human in the fleet. Over the comms, Reyes heard whispers, some reverent, some skeptical, about the ship that should never have existed. As they approached the Concordiate line, the alien vessels began adjusting their formation, clearly recognizing the Daedalus and prioritizing it as a threat. They're targeting us specifically, Keller reported from Tactical. All Concordiate vessels are charging weapons. Good, Reyes said calmly. That's exactly what we want. She placed her hand on the neural core interface. Daedalus, are you ready? The ship responded not with text this time, but with a subtle vibration beneath her palm, an almost organic response that Reyes had come to recognize as confirmation. Begin disruption sequence, she ordered. The Daedalus pulsed with energy unlike anything the Alliance engineers had designed. The neural core had developed this technique through its endless evolution, a cascading wave of precisely modulated signals that mimicked Concordiate communication protocols only to collapse them from within. Disruption field reaching critical amplitude, Webb announced, her voice tight with tension. Concordiate network showing destabilization. All Alliance vessels, Admiral Zhou's voice rang through the fleet-wide channel. "Prepare to engage on my mark." The Daedalus shuddered as the disruption field reached maximum intensity. For a brief moment, Reyes felt the ship's exertion as if it were her own, a shared consciousness between commander and vessel that transcended conventional interfaces. "Now," she whispered, both to her crew and to the ship itself. The disruption field erupted outward, invisible yet devastating to the Concordia's neural network. Throughout the alien fleet, bioships faltered and lost formation as their shared consciousness fractured. "Disruption confirmed," Wet reported triumphantly. "Concordia network is down." Admiral Zhou's voice cut through the comms. "All vessels, engage. You have 90 seconds." The Alliance fleet surged forward, weapons blazing against suddenly vulnerable targets. The battle had begun, and for the first time since the Concordia's arrival, humanity fought with hope. "It's not a planet." Dr. Carpenter's voice was hushed with awe as she studied the holographic display in the Daedalus's briefing room. "It's a construct, a massive bioengineered orbital structure approximately the size of Earth's moon." The image rotated slowly, a spherical latticework of interconnected nodes and chambers, pulsing with the same organic energy signatures they'd observed in Concordia vessels. Commander Reyes studied the structure alongside Admiral Zhou and the assembled officers. 3 months had passed since the battle at Procyon, a decisive victory that had temporarily halted the Concordia advance. Since then, intelligence gathered from captured bioship fragments had finally revealed the location of the enemy's central command structure. "We're calling it the Concordia Nexus," Intelligence Officer Chen explained. "Based on our analysis of captured data cores, it functions as both their homeworld and central nervous system. All Concordia vessels maintain constant neural links to the Nexus, receiving tactical updates and adaptive protocols, which explains their coordinated adaptation to our weapons," Keller noted. "They're not just learning individually, they are sharing a collective knowledge base." Admiral Zhou nodded grimly. "And now we know where that knowledge base is located. The War Council has authorized a strike against the Nexus itself." The room fell silent as the implications settled in. A direct strike at the heart of the Concordia, a mission with the potential to end the war. "The approach won't be easy," Zhou continued, highlighting a defensive perimeter surrounding the Nexus. "Long-range scans show at least 60 bioships in defensive formation, including 15 of their Dreadnought-class vessels. We don't have enough ships to force our way through," one of Zhou's staff officers pointed out. "No," the Admiral agreed. "We don't. That's why we're not sending the fleet." She turned to Reyes. "We're sending the Daedalus." Reyes met Zhou's gaze steadily. "A single ship, against their entire home defense fleet." "Not just any ship," Dr. Carpenter interjected. "The only ship that's consistently defeated their adaptive technology. The only ship they fear." She brought up new schematics on the display. "And we've developed enhancements for your disruption field technology." The proposed modifications were extensive. Integration of adapted Concordia biotechnology into the Daedalus's systems to amplify the disruption effect. Alliance engineers had been studying recovered fragments from destroyed bioships, reverse engineering their neural interfaces. "These modifications will allow you to penetrate their defenses and deliver a precisely calibrated signal to the Nexus core," Dr. Carpenter explained. "Essentially a system reset that will sever their network permanently." "There's just one problem," Admiral Zhou added. "The Alliance Oversight Committee insists on installing control systems to regulate these modifications. They're concerned about further evolution of the Daedalus's neural core after integration with Concordia technology." Reyes frowned. "The neural core doesn't respond well to external constraints. Its adaptive capabilities are what make it effective." "I understand your concerns, Commander," Zhou replied, her tone making it clear the decision was final. "But these modifications involve alien biotechnology we barely understand. The Oversight Committee has been quite insistent." Installation of the modifications began immediately. Alliance engineers swarmed the Daedalus, integrating captured Concordia technology while simultaneously adding monitoring systems and safety protocols. Despite Reyes's objections, override controls were installed on the bridge, allowing Alliance Command to remotely limit the neural core's functions if necessary. Takumi watched the process with thinly veiled frustration. "They're crippling it," he muttered to Reyes as they observed the engineers working in the core chamber. "These constraints will prevent the ship from adapting." "I know," Reyes replied quietly, "but we need these modifications to reach the Nexus." The night before deployment, when the engineering teams had departed and only the Daedalus's crew remained aboard, Reyes returned to the neural core chamber alone. The core pulsed with an erratic rhythm, its patterns disrupted by the newly installed constraints. She placed her hand on the interface panel. "I know you can hear me," she said softly. "They don't understand what you are, what we've become together. But I do." The display flickered, text appearing beneath her palm. ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* D***. I know. Rise nodded. And I'm sorry. But once we're away from the station. She glanced at the security cameras, now temporarily looped in a preset pattern thanks to Webb's discrete programming. If I remove these constraints, can you integrate the new systems without them? The core's pulsing stabilized slightly. *CONCO or DIAT biotc enology, compatible. Full integration possible with our Entoglisser. Rise smiled grimly. Good. Because tomorrow, we're going to do what we've always done. The impossible. Distance to Concordia Nexus, 20,000 kilometers in closing. Webb reported, her voice steady despite the tension gripping the bridge. Defensive fleet is adjusting formation to intercept. Commander Reyes nodded, her eyes fixed on the massive structure looming in the view screen. The Concordia Nexus pulsed with bioluminescent energy, its latticed surface rippling like the skin of some enormous organism. Surrounding it, bioships moved with eerie coordination, preparing to protect their heart. 8 hours had passed since the Daedalus had slipped away from Arcturus Station. 7 since Reyes had removed the Alliance constraints from the neural core. 6 since the ship had begun its true integration with the Concordia biotechnology, a process that had transformed the vessel in ways that even Reyes's crew found unsettling. They've detected us, Keller announced from Tactical. 63 vessels moving to engage. Initiate Phase 1, Reyes ordered. The Daedalus surged forward, its modified systems humming with energy that wasn't entirely mechanical anymore. Throughout the ship, circuitry and conduits had taken on an organic quality, metal and flesh merging into something new. The neural core no longer simply processed information, it pulsed with genuine awareness. Disruption field at maximum amplitude, Takumi reported. But it's different from our previous deployments. The field is evolving as it's emitted. On the view screen, the approaching Concordia vessels faltered, their precision formations breaking as the disruption field washed over them. But unlike previous engagements, the effect wasn't temporary. The bioships drifted, their neural networks not merely disrupted but partially assimilated by the Daedalus's hybrid systems. It's working, Chen whispered, monitoring the Concordia communications. Their network is fragmenting. Press the advantage, Reyes commanded. Take us through their defensive line. The Daedalus accelerated, weaving between disoriented bioships. Those that managed to fire found their weapons ineffective. The ship's hybrid hull absorbed the energy in the same manner as Concordia vessels, using it to strengthen its own systems. Alliance Command is hailing us, Webb reported. They're detecting unexpected power signatures from our position. They're demanding status updates. Tell them we're proceeding as planned, Reyes replied. She didn't mention that the plan had evolved far beyond what Alliance oversight had approved. As they closed on the Nexus, resistance intensified. The largest Concordia vessels, massive dreadnoughts nearly 10 times the size of the Daedalus, moved to form a final barrier. Their combined defensive fields created an impenetrable wall of energy. "We can't breach that," Keller stated flatly. "Even with our modifications, the concentrated fire from those dreadnoughts will overwhelm our systems." Rice placed her hand on the neural core interface, feeling the pulse beneath her palm. "Stronger now, more organic. Daedalus, we need a new approach." The response came not as text, but as a shared understanding that flowed through the interface into Rice's mind. Images and concepts beyond language. The crew watched in astonishment as their commander's eyes widened with sudden comprehension. "Redirect all power to the integration matrices," she ordered, her voice certain. "We're not going to fight through them. We're going to become something they recognize as their own." The ship shuddered as its systems reconfigured. The hybrid technology that had been gradually transforming the Daedalus accelerated its evolution, the vessel's outer hull rippling with bioluminescence identical to the Concordiate vessels. "Commander," Takumi's voice was hushed with awe and fear. "The ship is changing." "I know," Rise replied calmly. "It's becoming what it needs to be." As they approached the dreadnought barrier, the Daedalus broadcast signals identical to Concordiate communication protocols. For a critical moment, the massive bioships hesitated, their sensors detecting what appeared to be one of their own, yet not quite. That moment was enough. The Daedalus slipped between the dreadnoughts, accelerating toward the surface of the Nexus itself. "We're through," Webb announced, approaching target coordinates. "Prepare the final sequence," Rise ordered. The Daedalus aligned with a neural junction on the Nexus surface, extending filaments of hybrid technology to establish a direct connection. Through this link, the ship began transmitting not the destructive reset the Alliance had planned, but something far more complex, a new form of consciousness born from the merger of human ingenuity and Concordiate biology. "What are we sending them?" Keller asked, watching incomprehensible data streams flow from the ship into the Nexus. "Understanding," Rise answered simply. "We're showing them what we've become, something that was never meant to exist by either of our designs, something new." Throughout the Nexus, lights flickered as the central intelligence of the Concordiate processed this unexpected communication. Around them, the bioships ceased their attacks, holding position as if listening. "They're responding," Chen reported in disbelief. "The Nexus is communicating with us." On every display throughout the ship, a message appeared in both human language and Concordiate symbols. Convergent evolution, recognized. Any dui piosasa blitwa ack anodoliodi. Hgt*. The crew of the Daedalus watched in stunned silence as the first diplomatic exchange between genuinely alien intelligences unfolded through their hybrid vessel, a warship that had evolved beyond its original purpose to become something neither humanity nor the Concordiate had ever imagined possible. And in that moment, a war ended not with destruction, but with recognition.